Andrew Ald. I got connected with the Garden Pathways through a program that I was in. It was, yeah, at the beginning, it was more of to get out of a program thing to kill some time type thing, and plus, everybody was talking about free stuff, you know. And then when I started getting into the program, there wasn't really that much free stuff, but yeah, it's helped me out a whole bunch. I mean, I've had anger issues and had problems with low self-esteem and having to rebuild my life after so many years. And the mentors here, I got an excellent mentor. Her name is Crystal Martinez. She's excellent. The program is very helpful, but it's more they help you help yourself. It's not just, hey, you're going to come in here and miracles are going to happen. I mean, that's what I've learned from the program. And like I said, I get told that I've come a long way, and I don't think I've come as far as I would like to. But like I said, it's an everyday thing, and you get out of the program what you want to put into the program or put into yourself. As I could say. Like I said, my mentor, she's helped me out a whole bunch. Always been there and helps me out a lot. As far as mentally and my mental state and everything, and how I feel about myself. Yes, excellent program. I think as far as the program goes, overall, it's great. It's great. Look at me. I'm, uh, you know, just not too long ago, you wouldn't catch me smiling like this. Well, I come from a very bad place, and I was angry and very defensive. Resentment, I had a lot of resentment, and you know, and yeah, bad demeanor towards some people in my life, and you can't. And I wasn't letting go of the past, where there's still, everybody has baggage. I still got it. I got a whole truckload, you know. But it's not. How can I put it? It's not as heavy as it was. It used to be really heavy, but now it's, I'm letting, letting letting some of it drop off to the side. I've learned to loosen up, you know, and thanks to my mentor. Yeah, I'm working. I got a job, which was a big, self-esteem and morale booster. And my mentor, was pushing real hard on that. I'm not as angry as I was. I'm not saying I'm not angry, but I'm not as angry. I have, I deal with it a lot better now, through the program and some of the things I've learned. There's been quite a few changes. I got a place to live now, and I'm actually very fortunate. So, you know, uh, I'm just taking one day at a time. Am I a better person? I hope I'm a better person. I know I'm a better person by meeting Crystal. I'm a better person just by knowing her. And knowing, some of the other facilitators here. But like I said, I'm a work in progress still, and it's a day by day thing. I highly recommend the program to people. She's guided me through where, I was kind of like stumbling around in the dark and wanting to hit something, where, she turned a little light on and said, see, you can see. All you got to do is turn the light on, you know. Yeah, yeah. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Adonis Garcia. I'm a school-based mentor for the Current Community Mentoring AmeriCorps program. I work with 6th to 8th graders at Nova Vista Language Academy in Delano. For me, mentoring is important because we can be the extra support that can make a difference in a student's life. It can be a rewarding experience. Last year, I had a 4th grade mentee who started off as a disrespectful, disruptive student in class. By January, she was named Student of the Month. I hope the relationship we developed contributed to her growth. This school year, I have been working with students who are feeling isolated and overwhelmed. One student in particular has described it as being trapped in a bubble. Our weekly sessions have really helped her feel like she is not alone and that she has someone to talk to. Unfortunately, she is not the only one who is going through this, and working with her has shown me that all of our students need a little more help right now. Mentoring can contribute to an ideal world when the mentee is able to learn the necessary skills to become a better person and student, which can then lead them to becoming a successful adult.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Stephanie Inyama. For those of you who joined us on Wednesday, welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us today, welcome. This is part 2 of our mentor training series. If you our information, our PowerPoint for today and our PowerPoint for Wednesday will be posted onto the website after the conference. We also will be taking your questions and answers at the end of the training. So if you have any questions, you can put it into the chat and we will answer your questions. Today is more about talking to mentors who've already been matched, mentors who already have experience with mentoring. And it's more of like a reflection. So I would encourage you to have pen and paper because there's going to be some questions that you'd like to think about and you can write down for yourself to give you more reflection on your mentoring experience. Next. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is, next, do I have a close relationship with my mentee? You're really, right now, what I'd like for you to do is to truly reflect on what is my relationship with my mentee? What is our relationship like? How am I as a mentor? How is my mentee as a mentee? How are we connecting? Can you and your mentee communicate openly and honestly? Have you established trust and boundaries in your relationship? Do you make the effort to understand how your mentee feels, or are you just listening to speak versus listening to understand? Next. Do my mentee and I keep it real with each other? Do you feel like you have a truly authentic relationship with your mentee, or does it feel like it's kind of superficial? Next. And are you able to work out your differences effectively with your mentee? Part of developing the trust and building the relationship and the communication with your mentee is being able to agree to disagree or being able to work out your differences so that at the end you're both feeling okay. You're both feeling like you're drawing each other together. You're closer with your mentee and you're both feeling like your relationship is deepening. Next. So when we talk about communication, communication is talking more than is necessary is a barrier to effective communication and effective listening. Next. The biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. As adults, we've all done that. And a lot of times you'll find that we talk over each other or we want to get our point heard. And one thing when you're in a mentoring relationship with a young adult or with anyone, you always want to make sure that if you're listening to understand, you're really understanding what they're saying and you're not just trying to reply. Because when you're trying to reply, you're not really hearing what they're saying, you're hearing what you think they say. So you always want to make sure that you're listening to understand. And communication must be hot. That's honest, open, and two-way. Remember, communication is two ways. So if one person's communicating, is one person speaking and the other person isn't, then that's one-way communication. It's always got to be two-way. Next. So what is active listening? Now, if you look here on the slide, active listening is asking open-ended questions, Making sure you're requesting clarification. Just the act of requesting clarification is letting your mentee know that you really are listening, that you really are trying to understand. You want to be attentive, which is giving eye contact, not looking at your phone, not writing, not looking away or talking to others. And then, of course, you want to summarize, because effective active listening is about making sure that your person you're speaking to, your mentee, knows that you're listening. So if you're summarizing what your mentee said, I think what I heard you say, is this what I'm hearing you say? Is this what you're feeling today? I'm hearing that you're not having a great day. You want to summarize what they're saying so that they really feel like they're being heard. Or you can paraphrase. You can reflect their feelings of what they're saying. You're being attuned to their feelings, and then you're asking probing questions. Sometimes our mentees don't always like to communicate, or don't even know how to communicate in a way that they can share what they're really feeling. So you want to make sure that you're asking the questions, so you're bringing out their ability to communicate with you. And you want to say things like, what concerns me is, and that's what the mentee is saying. This is what concerns me. And what you're saying is, what I heard you say is that. Next. So when we talk about mentoring, we talk about the 3 B's of essential behaviors for successful mentors. The first B, be trustworthy. The relationship will go nowhere unless there's trust. Building your relationship with your mentee means being committed, keeping your word, saying you're going to do what you say you're going to do, making sure you show up when you say you're going to show up. Also, being empathetic. And we'll talk about the difference between empathy and sympathy a little later. But being empathetic, being able to put yourself in their shoes to understand what they're saying, and being authentic. One thing I can say about children and young adults, they always know if we're really being authentic or if we're trying to put on an act. And that is the first thing that can break down the trust building in the relationship. So you want to always make sure that you're authentic. And we'll go through these. Next. So when we talk about trustworthiness, it's a relationship without trust is like a car without gas, and you can stay in it all you want, but it won't go anywhere. So yes, your mentee will go through the motions of just being there, but they're not really feeling trust because you're not building the trust. And you have to be able to take the cues from your mentee to make sure that you're making sure that you're really connecting with your mentee. And in research, it shows that mentee self-esteem and social skills, when they feel that they can depend on their mentor, their self-esteem and social skills go up. When they feel that their mentors are unreliable, when you're not keeping your commitment, or you're not keeping your word, or you're breaking the communication and the trust and the confidentiality that you're having with your mentee, then that brings down their self-esteem and social skills as well. Next. So when we talk about being empathetic, next. So empathy is feeling or understanding what someone else is feeling, right? You're looking at their face and their body for cues. You're trying to understand, what is his point of view? How does she feel? How can I help? What is a kind thing to say? Empathy promotes close emotional connections between mentors and mentees, because you're showing your mentee that you really understand and you can really relate to what they're saying. You're not trying to pass it off and say, oh, you'll be okay, or if things will get better. You're really trying to say, I hear you saying this and I understand you're feeling this way. And so building the empathy is very important in your relationship with your mentee. Next. So when we talk about the difference between sympathy and empathy, so when you're saying sympathy is, I'm sorry for you, I'm sorry that you're going through this. Whereas empathy is saying, I understand what you're going through. So this next video we're about to show you is just a little clip so that you can really understand what empathy is. It's an example of empathy. Next. Volume.
No, no, I did not. I don't know. Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time. We had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
So when we talk about the three B's, we're talking about being authentic. Next. So being authentic in a mentoring relationship is very crucial to a successful mentoring relationship. Like I said earlier, people, adults, youth, young adults, especially youth, they really know when an adult is being keeping it real with them. Authenticity fosters close emotional connections. Be honest about your interests, abilities, and limitations, and be yourself. A lot of times we want our mentees to like us. We want our mentees to feel like they can talk to us. But if we're not being ourselves, that's the first barrier to building trust in the relationship with your mentee. And even though they may not tell you, they may not say it, but they will see it. It's going to be a barrier to you having a close relationship. And sometimes we want to make sure our mentee likes us. We want to make sure that everything's going great. We want to have a great relationship. And really what it is as a mentor is just really relaxing, being yourself and sharing the best part of yourself with your mentee. Even though sometimes we think, well, maybe if I embellish a little, maybe if I there's no need to do that. It's just about a relationship. Mentoring is relationship, relationship, relationship. And in order for you to build a healthy, fun relationship with your mentee, being authentic is one of the key components to making sure that you can do that. Next. So remember, keep it real. Keep it real with your mentee because you are modeling behaviors with your mentee. If you keep it real with your mentee will keep it real with you. Don't trade your authenticity for approval. And a lot of times we do it even as adults. We do it with our co-workers, we do it with our friends. And sometimes it's okay to just be yourself. It's okay to be yourself. And you don't have to trade who you are to seek approval. And as Dr. Maya Angelou said, authenticity is simply telling the truth to yourself and others. It's really just like I said about keeping it real. Next. So now we're going to look at some reflections, right? So hopefully you have a piece of paper and a pen. So in your mentoring experiences with your mentee, write down some of your mentoring learning curves. Like, what is it that you learned about yourself and your mentee that you're thinking, well, maybe I could have done this better? Or maybe I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm learning a lot about my mentee. What are some of the experiences you're having in your mentoring relationships that have been positive learning curves or not so positive learning curves? All of this type of reflection will help you to really look into your role as a mentor and your relationship with your mentee to see, is my relationship truly successful? Is my relationship with my mentee what I think it is, or is it what my mentee thinks it is, or is it what it is? So this reflection time is for you to really take hold and look to see, how is my relationship going with my mentee? Are there situations where you wish you had a do-over, right? We've all had those situations. Man, I wish I could do that over. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. And it's okay to want to have a do-over. What's more important is to own when you've made a mistake with your mentee. To just simply pass it on and act as if it doesn't happen, it didn't happen, is not truly being authentic with yourself or with your mentee. It's okay to say, you know what, today wasn't a good day. Today I kind of messed up. Or, you know, the other day when I was talking to you, I realized that I could have given you a little better advice at this. So it's never too late to do a do-over, especially if it means being authentic and real with your mentee. It just shows that you're human with your mentee. Your mentee, as youth and young adults, they're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But what we have to do as far as mentors and role modeling is owning it. When you own it, you're role modeling to your mentor, your mentee, that yeah, my mentor can make a mistake and admit it, and we're still okay. He's not perfect, and I'm not perfect, and that's okay too. Are issues in your mentoring relationship handled appropriately, if this applies to you? So appropriately is it being resolved? Are you getting the appropriate program staff or others who can help you deal with the issues? Are the issues just going and it's like pushing it under the carpet? You know, sometimes when we don't deal with issues, it becomes the elephant in the room. And all it does is keep building, and it keeps building until it explodes. So you want to always make sure that no matter how tough and uncomfortable the conversations are with your mentee about issues, you want to always address it. Because in relationships, for relationships to work, you have to talk about it, and it builds you closer. It builds a closer bond. Do you or your mentee ask for help when needed? Sometimes, you know, we like to feel we don't need help, or my mentee's like, I don't need anyone. I don't need help. And it's okay to have a conversation with your mentee to say, you know what, sometimes I need help too. And sometimes I have to ask my sister or my friend, or I have to ask someone that I trust for help. Sometimes I can't see what I'm doing, and I get feedback to know that, okay, maybe I'm on the wrong track, but I'm able to own that. And that's something that you want to do for your mentee as well. And do you feel supported by the program staff? When you're in a mentoring program, you should never, as a mentor, you should never feel like you're on an island by yourself. That is the number one thing that should not be happening. If you're feeling that way, then it's time that you and the program staff have a conversation. And it's a conversation on how you can be supported by that program staff, how the program can support you. Because in a mentoring relationship, especially in the program, there's so many dynamics of the relationship. There's so many dynamics of what your mentee has been through. And there's dynamics for yourself. As you're in this relationship, you're growing and you're changing as well. And you want to always make sure that you feel supported by the program staff. And if not, you should immediately address this, not with defensiveness with the staff, but with coming to them with an approach of, I really need more support from you. And then being able to articulate without making anyone wrong, but just articulating where you need that support. Next. So now we're talking about having challenging conversations. Now, for some of you in your mentoring relationships, there's no issues. You and your mentee can sit down, you can have challenging conversations. When you're finished with that, you're able to walk away and you both feel good or empowered. Or sometimes you don't, but you will accept what the outcome of the conversation is. So the next couple of slides are going to show you how you can have those challenging conversations. Next. So the first thing you want to do is create a safe environment for those challenging conversations. Be somewhere where there's neutral ground, where you feel comfortable and your mentee will feel comfortable with having the conversations. The environment is the key because you can't have an honest and authentic conversation if you don't feel comfortable in the space that you're in. So you want to make sure that you do that. And in understanding that everyone makes mistakes. So you want to set the groundwork for having the conversations. You want to be able to say, everyone makes mistakes. And maybe me as your mentor, I didn't see what mistakes I'm making. Give me some feedback. Tell me what it is that you feel that I could have done differently. Because what you're doing is you're empowering your mentee to have the difficult conversation. You're asking them their advice or for feedback, which is telling them that I value what you're saying. I value what you're telling me. A willingness to entertain different ways of handling the issue, right? So let's talk about this with your mentee. Okay, so if this happens again, what should we do differently? What is it something that I could do differently? What's something that you could do differently? How do we get it so that we're able to have these tough conversations and still be okay with having the conversation? An ability to admit that one doesn't know everything. And that's the first thing you can say. That's the first thing that I always say. I've been wrong before. I've made mistakes before. And I am okay with being able to tell you that I can do it better this time, next time. Maybe I should have done it this way this time, right? And also understand that if you're having issues with your mentee, it could be totally unrelated issues that are contributing to it. And it could be unrelated issues within yourself that may be triggering you with your mentee. So that's the first thing that you should look at yourself before you're talking to your mentee is like, what am I bringing to the table that doesn't have anything to do with my mentee? But maybe I'm doing a little projection. Maybe I'm feeling a certain kind of way that may be making my mentee feel uncomfortable. And you can have the same conversation with your mentee, like, what happened before you and I got together? What's going on that's making you feel uncomfortable, that's making you talk to me in this different manner? So you want to just, maybe that could be it. It could be it's neither one of you, but it's just certain situations that are affecting you that you're bringing to the relationship. And a feeling of mutual trust and respect. Always want to make sure that there's mutual trust and respect. If your mentee starts to speak to you a way that's disrespectful, you want to say, let's take a time out. Let's take a time out. I've made it a point to always speak and treat you with respect in our relationship. That's one of the things I value about our relationship, is that we can always speak to each other with trust and respect. Let's make sure that we continue to do this so that we can work out. I know that you're upset. I feel a little heated as well, and it's okay to say that. But regardless of how I feel in this moment, I still care about you. I still value our relationship. I still respect you, and I still trust you. Next. So when we talk about creating an environment for challenging conversations, let's agree to ground rules. Specify needs clearly. So depending on the topic, where it could be just a little tense, let's agree that we won't raise our voices with each other. Let's agree that we will be respectful. Let's agree that maybe it's best that if you write down how you're feeling and I write down how I'm feeling, and then we swap papers and I read it, let's agree so that I can maybe really understand and hear what you're saying and hear the effect that I'm having on you. So maybe it's good to create some ground rules depending on the situation, and be flexible in ways of handling the problem. There's no one, it's not a cookie cutter. There's no one way to handle dealing with difficult problems, right? So be flexible. Maybe there's something that you never thought of, or maybe there's something your mentee has never thought of. And maybe your mentee is not willing to be flexible. And then the conversation is, okay, so if this is how you feel about this, what's a different way that you could think about handling this that's still okay with you? You're always looking to your mentee for information, for feedback, for response, so that they know that they matter in the relationship, so that they know that they're being valued and that they're being heard. Also, sensitivity to cultural, gender, and personality differences that may influence perception. Sometimes we have to look at and put ourselves in check about our own cultural biases and our own biases that we have about different cultures or different individuals or different personalities, right? When people meet me, the first thing they're going to say is, Stephanie's loud. Yeah, I'm loud, but I'm loud and I'm a great person and I want to make sure that everyone's happy. But some people can automatically think a loud person, she's disrespectful, she's only going to want to hear her way, she's going to outtalk me. And so sometimes we come in with our own thinking of how people are without giving people a chance to show you who they are. So if you're feeling that with your mentee, that there are some things going on, maybe it's something that you should talk to someone about. Maybe you want to learn more about the culture. Maybe it's something about learning more about their culture so that you understand. And when I talk about culture, I'm not just talking about race and ethnicity. It's also youth culture, young adult culture, adult culture. You know, my son is 26 years old, and I know that he and his friends are in a totally different world than I'm in. And so I have to be able to relate to them and understand that their youth culture is totally different than I would call it my seasoned culture, right? So when you think about culture, think outside of the box. It's not just traditionally what we think of culture, but it's just about the dynamics of where our youth are today, where we are today. A lot of things that our youth go through and deal with today are totally different than the way we would have, or that I would have done it at their age or when I was growing up. And I have to be open and flexible to that. A key example, I'm working with my son on one of his projects. He has a video production company, and we have our weekly meetings. Now, I like agendas. I set up an agenda. That way we always know he's not an agenda person. They're like, no, we'll just go with it. We can just go with it. We can just go with it. And so it's his company. So I'm having to say, okay, it's his company. I'm just there to help and support him. If he doesn't want an agenda, he doesn't want an agenda. But that just goes to say the way we do things traditionally, which I think, of course, my way is right, by the way. And we think that our way is right. We have to give them space to allow them to be who they are in their space, and we have to respect that. So attention to the development of communication and problem-solving skills. You always want your mentee to know and to understand that no matter what or how tough it gets or whatever the issues, we can always work it out. And sometimes the solution is, let's not talk about it today. Maybe we were both a little emotional about it, but the next time we talk, let's take some time to think about it. And the next time we get together, let's have a truly meaningful conversation, and we can really have a deep conversation on what was really going on last week. And sometimes that's just the best thing to do, right? Develop a solution that works for both you and your mentee. So it's not about what you as an adult says, this is the way it's going to be. It's like, what's going to work? And you can agree to disagree, right? There doesn't necessarily always have to be a person who's right and a person who's wrong. Well, it can also be two people who have different opinions about a situation, and we can agree that your way is different than mine, but it doesn't make you wrong. Next. Now, sometimes those challenging situations become really difficult. And sometimes it's like it's the wheel keeps turning, and nothing is getting solved. It's getting more heated. And you never want to leave the situation where just forget it and drop it, because all it's doing is it's compounding itself to the next situation. It's going to compound itself to the next situation. So sometimes you have to use mediation to help resolve the dispute. And this should not be viewed as a sign of weakness. No one person can do all things, everything, and especially if our emotions are caught up in it. So there's nothing wrong with going to the program staff or someone that you both trust to say, this is what what we're thinking, because sometimes that third person can actually see what's going on when the two of you can't see it. When you're in the weeds, sometimes you can't see it. But then if you have a third person, they can see the forest before the forest before the trees, as they say. And this person can help you relate and help you communicate with your mentee, and can help your mentee communicate with you, so that you're understanding, okay, I wasn't hearing that, even though your mentee, and it could be that there's a communication gap between the two of you. Maybe either both or either of you are not the best communicators. And so sometimes you need some mediation there to help facilitate the communication so that you can get on the same page. And when you get a mediator, this person should be objective, neutral third party whose judgment the mentor and the mentee respect and trust. So it shouldn't be some random stranger who doesn't know you, because then how does your mentee feel trust? And how do you feel trust that this person is going to help you? This person's just going to come in and tell you this, that. But if you have a relationship with this mediator, and you both feel that this is a person that you respect and trust, then it will work towards figuring out how to deal with the challenging situations so that you can get them resolved. The mediator should have administrative or supervisory oversight and provide referrals or recommendations. So ideally, this mediator should be someone who's on the program staff, who you go to who you both trust, or someone that is referred by the program. So sometimes programs will outsource a mediator or a third party to help with the mentoring relationship, like they outsource trainers. They may outsource this. So you want to make sure that whoever you go to as a mediator, that this is someone that's had a referral from either the program staff or someone you trust, and has some recommendations. Now, if you're not in a program, then you want to talk to your mentee. I have this friend who I think can help us. This person, maybe give the qualifications, but you and your mentee have to agree on the mediator, because you're both in the relationship, and so you both bring value, and you want the relationship to work. So you both should feel comfortable with whoever this third party is. And then once the issue has been resolved, discuss ways to learn from it, right? And that's a great thing as a mentor. You can say, I realized after this that I was being this way, that I need to listen more, listen to understand versus listening to respond. And then you can share with your mentee what you learned and what your mentee learned. And all this does is build trust, and it brings your bond closer with your mentee. That's all you're doing, is building a stronger bond and relationship with your mentee. And then you want to use reflection to think about what happened, feelings, the regrets, and doing things differently the next time. And you can do this with your mentee or just on yourself as a mentor. You think about, like, wow, I wish I had a do-over, right? Or, maybe I was a little emotional, and realizing what triggers you, because we're all human and we all get triggered by certain things. And a lot of times we like to think that it's our mentee, I'm trying to help our mentee, but in the relationship, it takes two people. And you have to make sure not only understanding what triggers your mentee, but what triggers yourself, so that you can be fully present and open to building that relationship with your mentee, and being open to learning about yourself and how you are and how you respond. A lot of times in your relationships with your mentees, you're going to realize things about yourself that you didn't realize before, just because of the dynamics of having a different type of relationship. So you always want to reflect on it, and it would be good to share with your mentee as well. Next. So the most important thing in your mentoring relationship is having fun. Next. You want to make sure that you are engaged in fun, shared activities. You want to make sure, because having fun is really like an icebreaker. Having fun with something that your mentee is interested in or has a passion for is a great icebreaker. But having fun is what can help to break down those barriers sometimes when they start, right? Or if you feel that they're building up. Having fun, like I said, in my opinion, it is the number one thing in a mentor-mentee, in a mentoring relationship that you can do, is always being able to laugh, smile, dance. And having fun doesn't necessarily have to cost money. Having fun could just be like, let's go play hopscotch, let's do paddle tennis, let's do ping pong, let's walk, let's do anything that can get the juices flowing, that can make you laugh. That's just a good time. Because what you want to remember as a mentor is building great memories with your mentee goes a long way. You know, we always say, you know, being in a program, we say in the mentoring relationship, usually it goes a year. Our goal is that that relationship lasts a lifetime. And if it doesn't, then your mentee will have the memories with you of having fun, because you could be the only time in their life when they're really at their truest of being happy. So having fun and going back on the memories where, you know, my life was hard as a mentee, but I remember the times when I was with my mentor and we did this and I always laughed and I always had fun. And that's the beginning of setting the foundation for creating strong, long-lasting memories and the effects of that. A lot of times we as mentors don't always see the effects that we're having on our mentees immediately. But in the long run, you'll have long-term effects that you may see or you may not see. I remember one time when I was a program manager for a mentoring program, and I had a mentor who had a mentee who didn't speak a lot. And he's like, you know what? I never know if I'm making a difference. I never know if he likes me. He doesn't, he just kind of, he's there, he goes through the motions, but he doesn't really speak a lot. And come to find out, when the mentee was away from the mentor and was back with his friends, he was always bragging about his mentor, but his mentor never knew. So for those of you who are program staff who are on this, listening to this training, make sure that you're giving feedback to the mentors, making sure that they understand your mentee may not show you, your mentee may not tell you, but you really are making a difference. The one way that you will always know that you're making a difference is that your mentee shows up. If he shows up, even if he doesn't speak, but if he shows up, he's invested in the mentoring relationship. And you want to make sure as program staff that you're letting these mentors know that they are making a difference, because we all want to know that we're making a difference, right? There could be, maybe the mentee is acting out in class or you know, being disrespectful to adults. And maybe they've just stopped or they've changed. Well, how will you know that they've done that? You won't know unless you're getting feedback from parents or from mentoring staff. So it's very important to give mentors feedback about how they're having the effect. And then from your observations as mentoring staff, to give them feedback on how they're doing with their mentee and in their relationship. And mentors, don't be hesitant and don't be afraid to ask the staff, you know, I'm not really sure how it's going. How do you think, you know, how do you think it's going? What are some things that I could do to maybe break the ice a little? So it's never, there's no such thing as too many questions. You always want to make sure that you're getting the feedback to understand that you're doing well with your mentee. Next. So I always like to say, and for those of you who were on the training on Wednesday, closure begins in the beginning when you first match with your mentee. When you have to say, when the program is closing or it's at the end of the program and you have to say goodbye to your mentee, it should not be a shock. It should not be a surprise. And it doesn't have to be a sad experience. Closure should be a celebration of the time that you spent together. Right? You want to share how the relationship has positively impacted both of you. When you're with your mentee and you tell them, do you know that I learned this from you, that because of you, I was able to see things differently, that my relationship with my family and friends has improved because of our relationship, That blows the mind of mentees because they're so used to having the adults have an impact on them, they don't realize that the impact that they have on adults. And that just alone builds their self-esteem, it builds their confidence as they move forward. Share what you've learned about yourself and each other. It's great because a lot of times mentees don't necessarily like to share what they've learned. And so you can start off by sharing what you've learned. When I used to interview mentees to come into our program, I would always ask them, so tell me what's something good about yourself? Tell me something good. And they would always say it never failed. And I was working with youth and young adults. It never failed. I don't know. I don't know. But when I ask the question, you have friends, you have a best friend yet? What would your best friend say are some good qualities about you? They could name them like that. So a lot of times when our mentees are in their are in their space, they can't look at themselves to see how they see themselves, but they know from their friends how their friends see them and they're able to see it. It doesn't necessarily mean they buy into it, but they're able to say, my friend would say that I'm nice and I'm talented because this is the feedback they've been getting from their friends. So you always want to make sure that you share what you've learned about yourself and each other because it helps to build their self-esteem and give them a solid foundation. You want to also provide feedback that provides growth that you've observed. You know, when we first started together, I noticed that you were a little quiet. I noticed that you were just a little shy, but now it just seems like you've come into yourself, that you have a confidence. What do you think helped with that? What is, and ask them, not just sharing what you see, but asking them where they got that from, because it helps them to look into themselves. It helps them to evaluate themselves to see how they've grown and understand what you see and be able to articulate, well, I think it was because of this. And I think because when I started doing that, especially when you're working with them to set goals, you always want to make sure that you're setting obtainable goals for them so that they're always succeeding. So it could be a plethora of things that you see, but you always want to make sure you give them that feedback so that they understand, wow, I've really grown. And they may not have seen that before. Be prepared to listen and affirm their fears that your mentee may have. They may say, I don't want to stop our mentoring relationship. I want to be with you forever. And depending on the rules of the program, it may be possible, but then it may not be possible. But you want to let them know that you were fine before I met you. You're even better now. You'll be fine. Everything will be great. You're going to be okay. Because what I've learned about you is that you now have a confidence in yourself. You believe in yourself. I see that. And then you give them examples. You don't just affirm them and say, I see this, I see that. You want to give them key examples of where you've seen the growth so that they can relate to it and they can understand it and they can accept it. So our next slide is going to have a video about mentors in the movies so that you can see some movies where they shared mentoring experiences. And after that, we'll go through the question and answer. Next. Volume.
Hi, I'm Jay. A big part of my job is being a mentor. A big part of my life are the movies. So I thought I would show you some really great movie moments that show what being an effective mentor looks like. Roll the tape.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.
Yoda is all about commitment here. Trying is good, but what Yoda means is you really have to commit to this. Likewise, in a mentor-mentee relationship, you both have to commit. You just got to do it. Luke didn't go to Dagobah and run wind sprints and take Yoda for piggyback rides just for the fun of it. He sought out counsel because he wanted it. Even if you're not out saving the galaxy, having a mentor-mentee relationship is important. Dive right in. See where it takes you.
No grades at stake, gentlemen. Just take a stroll.
If you haven't seen this movie, stop what you're doing and go watch it right now. Seriously, go watch it. It'll change your life. Go.
We all have a great need for acceptance. But you must trust that your beliefs are unique, your own, even though others may think them odd or unpopular, even though the herd may go, that's bad.
Part of a good mentor-mentee relationship is teaching someone not to depend on conformity. Conformity, while comfortable, restricts growth and limits perspective. Empowering your mentee to see beyond the coziness of conformity is essential to building up their confidence and their thought leadership. Go watch it.
Why then did the Sorting Hat place you in Gryffindor?
Because I asked it to.
Exactly, Harry, exactly. Which makes you different from Voldemort. It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Choices are important. Sometimes people come to a mentor and ask what choice they should make. If your mentor simply makes a choice for you, it's not your choice anymore. You can choose to be loyal. You can choose to be brave. It's the choices that define who we are. So like those cinematic mentors said, commit, be yourself, own your choices. Thanks for watching. I'm going to go back to my movie.
Okay, so I think we'll be doing questions and answers.
Yes. So, Stephanie, we've got a lot of different questions here. Our first one I'm going to start off with is certain professed peer skills may not seem applicable in virtual settings that might be void of screening or context. What are some solutions?
I'll be honest, I don't really understand that question. So
Okay.
whoever did that question, can you clarify? Because
Sure.
I really don't know how to answer that. So if you can clarify, put it back in the chat and be a little more clear, I would appreciate it.
All right, we will move on to the next one. What would you do if your mentee confided in you something that is harmful to themselves, such as substance use, but they are unwilling to seek treatment?
Okay. So one of the three, we talked about this on Wednesday, that when a mentee discloses that they're harm to themselves or harm to others, or there's crime that's going to cause someone to be harmed, those are things that definitely have to be reported. Now, if your mentee is saying, can you repeat the question again?
What would you do if your mentee confided in you something that is harmful to themselves, such as substance use, but they are unwilling to seek treatment?
Right. So that's something that's harmful to themselves. That is something that has to be disclosed. So when you're first starting your mentoring relationship, one of the things, and what we talked about on Wednesday, is you always want to make sure that you're setting boundaries, you're talking about confidentiality. So if your mentee is disclosing to you that they have a substance abuse problem, then your mentee understands, because when you first were matched with your mentee, you've explained to him or her, there are certain things that you tell me that's confidential that I have to disclose for your safety and as a recommendation that the program recommends that has to be done. So if your mentee comes to you and tells you that they have a substance abuse problem, you're going to have a conversation with your mentee that says, so you realize, remember when we first met and we talked about confidentiality? Well, this is one of the topics that comes under the confidentiality where I have to disclose it. So how do we do this? Do you want to come with me, or is it something that I'll go and talk to the program staff? So you want to make sure, always make sure when you are first matched with your mentee that you talk about what must be disclosed to staff, what confidences cannot be kept. It is very important, because if you don't, and your mentee discloses something to you, and you say, well, I have to tell, I have to tell, you're going to lose the relationship, you're going to lose the trust, the relationship is not going to be successful moving forward because the mentee was going to feel like you violated the trust. So making sure that you talk to your program staff about what must be disclosed. Now, those are the three. Some programs may have more items that must be disclosed. Like I said, harm to yourself or harm to someone else, or if there's a crime that's something where there's going to be harm, or there's some type of neglect or abuse, something like that that's happening that's immediate, that that you must disclose because it's happening, and if you don't disclose it, it's going to continue to happen. That's a conversation that you have to explain to your mentee about. Remember, we had the conversation about what's confidential. So you definitely have to disclose it. But what you want to do is you want to invite your mentee to be a part of that conversation. Then your mentee is probably not going to want to be a part of that conversation. And your mentee is probably going to be upset with you. Right? That is why it is important in the beginning of the relationship to make sure your mentee understands that. If this person is telling you that I'm doing this all the time and this and that, basically they have a serious substance abuse problem, you have to disclose it. Program staff are mandated reporters, and it can come back. It can come back that the mentee, something happened and I told my mentor, and they're going to say, why didn't you disclose this information? It's really about safety more than keeping a confidence with the mentee that you had previously explained to them. The only thing, you can tell me anything in the world, I will keep it confidential except for these three things. So you want to make sure that you do that in the beginning of the relationship. You do it, you say that periodically in the relationship. So when if that mentee comes to you and says that mentee knows that you're going to have to tell someone. Next.
Thanks, Stephanie. And kind of keeping in line with that, what if the mentee has no interest in changing, even when they are aware of the consequences, consequences/negative impacts on their behavior?
Well, I think that's a conversation that the mentor and the program staff have to have about that. That is not something that is up to the mentor because there may be some other dynamics that are going on. So you want to always go back to the mentoring staff to ask for feedback, direction, what they think is best for your mentoring relationship. You as a mentor, you're there to support, you're there to be there to empower your mentee. Those issues that are that have a truly negative impact that can cause harm or that are just not good are not in the lane of the mentor to make the decision on how to handle it. And all programs should be training their mentors on this. You want to always go back and look for help and look for assistance and look for support, because what you may think is right or okay for you and your mentee is possible. There's some things that you don't know about. And so the program staff is going to know. And so you need to get their feedback and their input, because you may be thinking you're doing something good and you could actually be making a bad situation worse, or not even knowing that you're causing more harm to your mentee. Next.
Hi, Stephanie. So we have a question here. When mentoring, there are times I feel personally triggered by a mentee's actions or past experiences. How do I help my mentee without allowing my emotions to get in the way?
So once again, I would talk to the program staff. If you are in a mentoring program, you should never feel like you're on an island by yourself. Your mentoring staff should be the ones to help give you support. And I will say that. Also, if you know what your triggers are, you have to be prepared with how to deal with them in the moment. Like, I'm telling you to go and talk to your mentoring staff, but at the moment, you can't talk to the mentoring staff, right? So what you as a mentor, you know what we all know what our triggers are. So it's having a conversation that can either change the direction of the conversation or preparing yourself on, if this happens, I'm going to do this, right? And part of I'm going to do this is having a conversation with the mentoring staff. A lot of times the issues that you're having with your mentee, it should not just be you alone working or dealing with those issues. It's not fair to you as a mentor. You don't have the expertise that you have been equipped with to be able to handle that, right? But you also, in lieu of that, if it's like in the moment and you don't have the time, like I said, you want to think about, like, what are my triggers? And maybe this is something that you think about before you're even triggered, in case you get triggered. You may not get triggered. You want to think about what your triggers are. I know for me, my triggers are rude and disrespectful behavior and someone that's a bully. I already know that's my trigger. So I already know that if that happens, I'm just going to, okay, thank you, walk away. I'm going to put myself in a state of mind so that I don't react. What it does for me is I speak very slowly, and then that's been told, well, she's speaking down at me. Sometimes there's a good solution, sometimes there's not. But if you know what your triggers are and you're aware of it, it is going to help you in the moment of how you're going to respond. And that's all you're trying to do. You're just trying to get through the moment so that you're responding appropriately, that you're keeping yourself intact, and then you go from there. Next.
Thanks, Stephanie. There was one question, it had two parts to it, so I'm just going to circle back to that. Is there a point where the relationship between mentor-mentee is no longer progressing? And if so, how can we as mentors change that?
Well, sometimes a mentor may think the relationship isn't progressing. And sometimes the mentee does. Because for some mentees, the fact that my mentor is just showing up is enough for me. So you've got to think about, when you say progressing, is it progressing? So put yourself in your mentee's shoes. If I'm my mentee, would my mentee think that this relationship is progressing? Would think that, because progression could be that you guys are getting closer. Progression could be that you're just spending time together, right? Just because it doesn't look like it's progressing for you doesn't mean that it's not progressing. And that's another thing. You go back to the program staff and you have the conversation with the program staff. They can give you pointers. They can let you know. But just remember, we as adults, we expect to see things to look a certain way. How it's landing for us may not be the same way that it's landing for your mentee. So just making sure that when you're looking at what progression is in your relationship, look at your mentee. How is your mentee responding to you? How is your mentee interacting with you? Is your mentee, because the only way it's not progressing is if you're together and your mentee basically ignores you when you're not there. If you have your mentee's attention, as far as I'm concerned, it's progressing, right? So you may want to look at your expectations on what you expected to see. And you may want to do a check-in with the mentoring staff, because that will definitely be helpful. But a lot of that, when you think about, I don't feel like it's progressing, what are your expectations? Are they realistic or unrealistic? Next.
Thank you, Stephanie. A very good mentor may still not have the ability or skills to best mentor a consumer, especially not knowing much about the mentee or the circumstances. Are supporting mentors often enough to improve things or treatment?
Okay. So I will be the first one to say, not everybody who wants to be a mentor should be a mentor. So let's just say that. So when you're screening your mentors through training, and that's the importance of training your mentors. Because I've had mentors who have gone through the training, we used to say 20 hours of training, whatever the amount of hours of training, and realize that this mentor, it just has some type of dynamic that's kind of off-putting, or it just doesn't feel like would be a healthy or a good situation for a mentee. There's nothing wrong with saying, thank you, maybe refer them to a different program, or just don't match them and have the conversation. Maybe they need more training. I've met mentors who none of the other mentors liked, but the person, this mentor doesn't do well with adults, but they do really well with children, which was very interesting, right? And then I've also had mentors that I've had to say, I don't think this is a good fit for our program. And I've had mentors come to me and say, if you would have matched that mentor with the kid, I would have dropped out of the program. So that's why it is so important while you're training. The screening process is part of the training. Making sure you're doing interactive activities so you can gauge how they'll deal in certain instances and circumstances. Making sure that you're able to see, okay, if this mentor is it's a little tough, but it has great relationships with kids. And we as mentoring staff have to check ourselves with our biases, because I've had mentors who I just really didn't like. But as we started doing training and working and listening to their experiences and realizing that, and they'll tell you, I do really well with kids, not so well with adults, right? And then you look to see, but you've got to really, as a program staff, just go by your gut, go by your instinct. Just because you may have kids on a waiting list or mentors and you want to hurry up and get these matches, not all matches are good matches. And we have to be okay with realizing sometimes we make a mistake. Because sometimes people show up as Sally and end up Andy, right? So you have to be able to realize that if it's not working, what it looks like, and really following that. But also knowing that everybody who goes through your training doesn't have to be matched. Okay? Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I've got a question here that says, do you think that telling a mentee something that they don't want to hear can damage their willingness to confide in you? I don't want my clients to feel judged.
Okay. So you have to meet your mentee where your mentee is at. As you grow and develop and the trust building and the relationship starts, the mentee will eventually, and I'm like 99%, I've had this experience and other mentors, eventually you'll be able to have that conversation. It may not be now, it may be 6 months from now, but as you start to develop the relationship with your mentee, they will eventually open up and have the conversation. You as a mentor, you have to meet your mentee where he or she is at. Don't start asking questions that they don't want to have answers to, because you're just another adult who's not respecting them or hearing what they're saying. And it's just going to build up a wall. We have to stand back as mentors and just remember that as long as I work on building trust and communication, making sure that my mentee feels he or she can talk to me about anything, eventually, if that doesn't come up, something similar, it's like a 360-degree situation. It's going to come back sooner or later. And your mentee may not want to talk about it now, but maybe next month they'll want to talk about it. And it could be just maybe the space that they're in, but you have to respect their right to not to want to talk about it. Right. And then you also have to be very clear about not making them wrong. It's a simple, like, what could you do next time? What could you have done differently? We sometimes in society, there's always got to be somebody who's right. There's always got to be somebody who's wrong. And it doesn't have to be that way. Everything is a learning curve, right? So what could you do differently? If this happened next time, what would you do different, right? What could you do next time? So it's a conversation of not telling them what they should do or telling them how they should be, but asking them and coaching them. What do you think about this? Because sometimes they may not know. So, well, I don't know what I should do differently. So, well, maybe next time, maybe just don't raise your voice. Maybe could that be it? You're giving them recommendations. Not telling them do this, do that. Give them recommendations as far as options. People act and the way, and things are gonna land for them. They're gonna respond to things the way they're gonna respond to them. But as mentors, we need to give them recommendations on, because a lot of times mentees think they only have a choice. Our job is to show them they have A, B, C, D, E, F, all the choices. There's different choices. They just can't see it. And if you want them to hear it, you can't tell it to them. It's a conversation about what's possible for later, what's possible in the future. What could you do better? You know, what next time, what could you do differently that you think, right? Okay. And then you want to make sure that if it's a conflict with someone else, that yes, that they're owning it and you're owning for the other person. Yes, this person should not have done this and this person should not have done that, because we as adults, we're always going to look and say that person's wrong. But we all, in a relationship, we all have to own our stuff. There's something that I could have done differently. When I was growing up with my sister and I, we were like the 20, 21 age, and we were always butting heads, always butting heads. And I realized that there were certain things that I said to her that triggered her. And one day I was just so tired of the disagreements and the fighting that I decided to respond differently to her. I just didn't say what I wanted to say. Even though in my mind I'm like, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. But I didn't say what I wanted to say to trigger her. I just kind of said, okay, you know what? I could have done it differently. Or I owned my contribution to that conversation. And from then on, our whole relationship changed. And we never really talked about it, but when she saw that I was starting to engage her differently, she started to engage me differently. And that's basically what you have to do, is you have to make sure that your mentee is owning what he contributed without making him wrong, but making him or her understand, maybe next time you can do something different. Next.
Thank you, Stephanie. What are some ideas to engage or make it fun with a mentee during COVID pandemic? Any thoughts? And then I would just like to further that, I'm sorry, just a bit, to even ask virtually. So both ways. So what comes to mind, like when you said that, off the top of my head, is what is it that the mentee likes to do, right? You know, it's looking at music videos. Make sure you use the edited ones, not all the ones that are just the language we have to bleep out. Really finding out what interests them. If you want to get their attention, you have to do stuff that interests them. And they may say, well, you know what? I don't know what I like to do. And then you just say, well, are you interested in that? Well, let's look up some science stuff, or let's look at something about the stars, or look at a map of the different places you like to travel. Try to get the juices flowing of what do you see a little light bulb come on when they say, yeah, I don't know, I may like that. Then say, hey, let's try it. If you don't like it, we can think of something else. But really getting something that they're interested in, because if you go and start, and then also sharing your interests with them. Well, you know, I really love to read certain types of books. I'm really into astrology. I'm really into that. So maybe it's taking turns. Let's share. So let's work on. Let's do something that you like. Let's do something that I like. Let's do something that we've never even thought of, that we can see if let's see if we're even interested in stuff like that. So it's always being open to trying something new, thinking outside of the box, especially virtually. Like you guys could do yoga virtually. You could exercise. You could put music on and you could dance. You could, read poetry. There's just so much that you can do. You just have to think outside of the box. You could even cook, right? Maybe, it's like, okay, fine. What groceries do you have? And maybe your mom will let you cook, or, if they're of age. And maybe it's just like let's make a grilled cheese sandwich. Right? So they're in the kitchen, you're in the kitchen, and you're both cooking together. There are many things you can do. You just have to find where the interest is. And maybe you start, if they don't have any interest, maybe you start, well, how about if we start with something that I like to do to see if you like it? And then next time we'll do something that you like to do. It's really about, and we all know, if there's something I'm into, like history, I'm not into history at all. So someone comes to me with history, I'm like, nah, but then maybe there's a certain type of history, right?
And maybe for me, being an African American woman, Black history, even though I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm interested in that. Just thinking outside of the box, looking at the different layers, right? You know, just really trying to find out what is going to keep them engaged. If you want them to show up on that Zoom call, if you want them to come back, you've got to figure out things that they like to do. If they like to dance, like I said, that maybe it's artwork where you're both drawing, or you guys are doing collages, or you're doing, you know, writing poetry and you read it to each other. There's a lot of things you just have to be creative and think outside of the box. And a lot of times the program staff will let you know, because they usually done a profile on the mentees. So they can let you know some of the interests, right? So you can say, so yeah, you know, so I hear you like this. Is this something, would you be interested? Or maybe doing something basic, you take that interest into a higher level. Right? So just making sure, like I said, the key is to make sure that it's something interesting that will catch their attention. And even if they're thinking, you know what, I don't like that, say, well, you know what, how about if we just try to look at this video for a minute, and if after 30 seconds you don't like it, we'll turn it off. Okay, you've got nothing to lose, right? So you just want to just make sure that there's so many different things, you know, versus in person, you're kind of limited if you're at school. But at home, you know, there's so many things they can do. You can get Play-Doh, and, you know, if it's a young kid, and say, okay, you know, get them some Play-Doh. Let's make things with Play-Doh. Or there's a lot of different things that you can do. Next.
That was actually your very last question, Stephanie. So thank you so much. We have loved having you as a presenter and learning from you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you all. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. And to all our attendees, thank you for coming back. Your evaluation and slides will be emailed out right after this session, so make sure you're checking your emails for those. And just a reminder, next Wednesday at 1, we have a session on trauma-informed yoga. And next Friday at 1, we will have a session on trauma-informed care. Registration is still open, so if you have any friends or colleagues you think would be interested, feel free to send out registration information and we will get them the attendance links. Thank you all so much for being here, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.